Hi, everyone. We're live here on Leslie's page, Enriching Relationships. So as people log on here, if you wouldn't mind just letting me know in the chat that you're here and maybe where you're from. I'm Coach Jen, and I'm honored to be your host today while Leslie has to travel. And I've been one of her coaching members for, over 6 months now. So it's been quite an honor for me to be here with all of you. So make sure you say hi to me in the chat, and I'm going to keep working along here to keep an eye on the comments. And I've got Julie in the background to kind of keep us all on track. So hi, Julie, and thank you, Julie. So like I said, let us know that you're here so that we can get going today on our topic, which hopefully you can see on the screen, is why we say yes to everything and everyone. So we'll get started in that in a minute. So I see Lori and Deanna and Grace. So she's from Michigan. Hi, Colorado Springs. I've been there a couple of times. It's beautiful. Garden of the Gods is one of my favorite places on earth. Hi, Emily. I think I saw you the other night on here. So that's great to see you back. We've got Boston. I want to go there this summer, actually. So for those of you that don't know me, like I was saying a minute ago, I joined Leslie's team most recently as one of her coaches. I've been a professional coach for over 10 years now, also a registered nurse, and I live in Canada, just on the just north, about 2 hours north of Syracuse, New York. So for those of you familiar with upstate New York, I'm just a hop, skip, and a jump from the border. So you might pick up on my Canadian accent sometimes, and my Yankee accent is what I've been told. So Germany, wow, that's great. And South Africa, oh, you guys just warm my heart from coming from all over the world. So thank you all for joining from wherever you are. So I can't even begin to announce the different time zones. Maybe let us know what time it is in Germany or South Africa, because that's amazing. So we're here to talk today about why we say yes to everything and everyone. So I know statements like always or never, everything and everyone might be a bit extreme, but I think you probably know why we're here to talk about it, because we do it maybe to a fault. Where we feel compelled to do such a thing by saying yes all the time. So I'd really like to open it up to all of you first. If you have had the habit of saying yes, maybe compulsively, why do you do that? So I'll just pause for a minute and let you enter into the chat. Why do I say yes a lot? Maybe too much. We'll see what comes up here in the chat. I know it's a little bit behind. We've got 6 p.m. It's dinner time for some people. So we're asking the question, why we say yes to everything or everyone. So just enter into the chat maybe one of your reasons why you would be compelled to say yes. So I'm seeing guilt, people pleasing. Absolutely. Catherine, I'd love to hear more about what you mean by the guilt. Like, what is that really about? Tell me more if you can. Emily saying, I don't want to disappoint anyone. Absolutely. Another disappointment. Yep. Because we want to be liked. Absolutely. No, those are all really good ideas. So really what it comes down to, I think, is it can be a variety of things, and it's very, very personal for everyone as to, our topic today, why we say yes to everything and everyone. And I think some of the reasons can be that it's easier. Do you not find sometimes it's easier just to say yes, and then to have to give an explanation to say no? I think that's really important. Searching for acceptance, I see. Not feeling safe, Christy says, especially with her husband. Yeah. So having a sense of purpose, for sure. So I think sometimes just at a very, superficial level, it's just easier to say yes than to say no, because no often means we have to give a reason. And then we may not want to have to give the real reason. So we're left scrambling a little bit with that. So that could be definitely a reason. Yeah. Isabel saying, yep, it's easier. Thanks, Coach Leanne. She's saying fear of rejection, which is absolutely something else that is huge here. So it's not only our fears deep down as fear of rejection, fear of not being liked, all of those types of things. It's also the repercussions. so it's fear all around. And I don't know about you, but I see fear as being our worst counselor. I see fear as action of the enemy, and I don't want to give him any more of a foothold than I can. So it's really important in my mind to, in my heart, to really look at the reasons we might be afraid to do something and the reasons why we do something. So in this case, say yes to everything, right? So Karina's saying, I hate confrontation. Yep. So that's maybe being afraid of one of the repercussions, this confrontation. Worrying about how the other person responds. Again, these are all like really fear-based, don't you find? Yeah, this is really good stuff. Because we can be manipulated. That's right. We don't like disagreement, feeling selfish, another huge one, right? So again, these are all sort of all the fear-based types of things that I'm hearing about, which I think is probably the biggest aspect of this, but I'm sure there's lots of other reasons. Sometimes we say yes because we're paid to. It's our job. It's within our job. And even if it's outside of our scope for our job position, we still feel obligated to say yes to appease our boss, or because we get paid to do that, right? So I'll just pause there for just a second, and just to remind everyone, now that we've got more people on here, that this is Leslie's public Facebook group. And so with that, just keep in mind that your comments could be seen by someone that you might not expect to be on here, that it is accessible to the public. So if you do want to make a comment and you're concerned about anonymity or confidentiality, then please feel free to still post what you like, but maybe use a different name for the scenario, or say a friend, I'm asking for a friend, that type of thing, so that you can keep yourself safe as we engage here. So just wanted to give everyone that reminder. And if you have a specific question as we go through, my trusted sidekick here, Julie, is keeping track of all the questions, and she'll post them in a separate document for me to help be able to answer them before the end of our time together today. So back to our topic, of course, is why we say yes to everything and everyone. And so I was asking, why do we do this? And a couple of reasons is because no makes it deserves an explanation, we think. And so saying yes is easier. We've talked and touched on a lot of what is sort of a fear-based approach. So we're afraid of feeling rejection. We're afraid of confrontation, any of those types of things. I mentioned that sometimes it's because we're paid to, or maybe if we're not even paid to, maybe we have a certain ministry in our church or something like that, where we're looked upon as that go-to person. So again, a sense of obligation, even if it's outside of the scope of our practice. What else am I saying here? Yes, to saying yes to my boss. That's really good. Fear of others will be upset if we say no. Yeah, fear of being wrong. Sure, absolutely. I think someone else has already touched on this in the chat. It's to make people happy, because if we make other people happy, I think at least initially it makes us feel happy. But we may have the feeling of remorse or regret later that we said yes to something. So it's that short-term hit. Like immediately we have that excitement to say yes and maybe try on something new without really having given it a deeper thought as to what this means to all of our other commitments, to our time, to our own self-care, to our energy. So we have to be mindful of those things before we jump right in to make other people happy, don't we? So Dorothy's talking about living with someone that makes her lose her self-confidence, and she's hoping to take her control back, or has taken her control back, and having that powerful no is really critical. When I was on one of our Facebook Lives the other night with Leslie, we were talking kind of in a similar vein here about saying yes all the time. We were talking about overfunctioning. And I've also heard her say recently this week in our Facebook Lives that one of the first words a toddler learns is no, right? It's a really powerful word. And as we've often heard it say, no is a complete sentence. And so sometimes we have to go back to those things that we learned as toddlers, to set boundaries for ourselves and maybe for others to learn how we want to be treated. So no is a really powerful statement that we're kind of talking about on the other side of this today. So I guess a couple of other things is that we feel we need to. So there could be possibly some codependency there, that we have to say yes to everything to help enable that person, even though they're perfectly capable of doing it on their own, trying to save them from someone, being that rescuer type of person. So that goes a little bit deeper when we feel that level of compulsion, or we need to, or something's going to be wrong with us. We might even feel more anxious if we don't say yes. So there's lots that we could dive into there. But I want to introduce what we're doing for a week long, in about 2 weeks, I think, starting on the 20th of June. Leslie's introducing a Moving Beyond challenge. And I will quickly put up the link here at the bottom. You should be able to see the leslievernick.com/challenge, where you can sign up. It's really simple and easy. So we're doing 5 days of emails and Facebook Lives and prompts with action steps for you to be able to move beyond certain things. So just for 5 days. And we're talking about things moving beyond overwhelm, moving beyond negative thoughts in our head. We're talking about holding on to grudges and resentments, bad moods that ruin our day. We're talking about, that fear of failure and, being able to try something new. And like we're talking about today, maybe saying too many yeses. How can we move beyond all of that? And it's for 5 days straight with some action items, which I love as a coach, because coaching is very forward moving. I think it's fantastic. And it's $17. You can't beat that. That's hardly a Starbucks a day, really, if you think about it. So it's really worth it to have that skin in the game, to make that both monetary investment as well as your time and your energy to really devote to this. So I really want to encourage you to sign up at leslievernick.com/challenge. And like I said, for those 5 days starting June 20th and all the way through from the Monday to the Friday, you'll see us live, all the different coaches, Leslie, and all the emails that will come through to help you overcome some of these things and move beyond. So that's something that we really want to invite you into. And I think it would be a really great activity for all of us to participate in. So back to our topic today, as one of the topics that we will address in 2 weeks' time, is saying yes to everything and to everyone. So we were talking about some of the reasons for it. So the why behind it, which is really important, because once we understand sort of when we become awakened to why we do something, then we have more choice about it. So if we do recognize that it's, because I get paid to, and it's because I need to, or else something bad will happen, or just because it's easier, that's where I really want you to dig down deeper. And something I like to introduce is the 5 whys. So sometimes if we start with one why, it gives us that superficial kind of reason or excuse as to why we do something. But then I challenge you to dig a little deeper and ask yourself why 5 times. So hopefully by the 5th time, you're really getting to the root of what's going on here. And once you become aware of that root, you'll be able to be so awakened to choices that you have and taking different possibilities as to how you want to address this. Maybe it is okay to say yes to this one. It fits in your schedule. It aligns with your values. Great, go for it. But it'll also give you the choice and the courage, perhaps, to be able to say no to those things. So I'm just going to take a look at some of the comments here. Yeah, God help me to become good. Cornelia is talking about, God help me become free from people always trying to please all the time. Now that I think first to try to talk with a person. So I think it is really stopping, like I said, to pause and reflect as to what choices we have in that moment. And a pause can just be 2 seconds. It's not like you even have to say to the person, let me think about it, because sometimes that just prolongs the inevitable and creates even more anxiety. Even just a 2-second pause, because you've done reflecting like we are today, or like you will do with the deeper dive when we have this challenge in 2 weeks' time, right? And you're really going to have a chance to look at this more intently, which I think is pretty awesome. So back to the 5 whys example, if I can maybe just run us through a quick game. So if someone says, for example, just something sort of high level. So it would be like, oh, it's just easier. That's why I say yes all the time. And I'll say, okay, so what makes it easier? Well, then I don't have to I don't have to really think about it. I won't have to feel guilty. I won't have to, that sort of thing. And then I'll ask, okay, so now we're into the third sort of why, or what makes that so scary or whatever. So then you ask yourself, okay, well, what if I feel guilty? Like what's wrong with that? Well, if I feel guilty, then, it causes me stress at home, and then I can't sleep, and then I've got this pit in my stomach, and then I don't eat properly. And I'll say, okay, so what happens if you can't sleep at night or you're not eating properly? Well, then I don't have any energy for my kids and for my family, and that sort of thing. So you can see, as we keep asking those tough questions, we might have the opportunity to really drill down at either what the real reason is behind it, or what the deeper consequences are to this. So in that example, as I just took myself there, so if it really comes down to not having good self-care practices, and it affects my family and my job, for example, because I'm not sleeping or eating properly, then that gives me pause to go, do I really need to say yes to this thing over here if it's going to cause me all this grief over there? So again, being awakened to some of these things by challenging ourselves into the deeper reasons as to why can be really, really helpful. Deanne's talking about the more we say yes, the more yeses will be expected of us. Yep. So that's a repercussion that initially we were talking about, fear of repercussion. Well, that's a longer repercussion. That's where some of the resentments come in, right? Because then now we're asked all the time. People can't just be happy with the first yes that we said. Now we become their go-to, and it gets harder and harder to say no if we're that people pleaser, right? So again, as Julie's prompting you here, feel free to put questions into the chat. And I see she's already got a couple of here. So maybe I'll pause there for a second. So one question I'm reading here. So Christy says, my husband literally just asked me this morning to start telling him when he is wrong. And I told him I don't feel safe telling him no because of his emotional outbursts in front of the children. What is a good next step around this? Well, let me just say, I think if it's a safe thing to do, I'm really pleased that your husband's asking he's asking you to tell him when he's wrong. I'm hearing an opening there, possibility, like for him to actually be engaged in that. But then I recognize what you're saying is that you don't feel safe in telling him that, especially because of the children. So what is a good next step around this? I would potentially ask him to have a deeper conversation around this when the children aren't around, and maybe even role play with him what this looks like, so that you do have the possibility to say yes to him for his request, or maybe put conditions around it as to, I'll tell you under these circumstances. So when the kids aren't around, when I do feel safe to do so, maybe I won't say something right away, but I'll think about it and talk to you later in private, that kind of thing. So whatever's going to make you feel safe, and then still maybe get you towards that yes, if it's a healthy engagement for you to have with him. I think that's really great. And if you have more to add, Christy, just put it back into the chat to make sure I have more of the context if you like. So another question we have here is, how do you become comfortable with people not being happy with you, even not liking you because you don't want or you don't do what they want? So that goes back to what we've talked about earlier, is why we say yes to people is to please them, to make them happy. So that is really something that we have to work on. And I think it really starts to dig into how we value ourselves. And I would really start with looking at and reading any scripture that means something to you, that shows how God feels about you. How does God value you? So instead of looking for that external validation from another human being on this earth, start with how God sees you, which I think is such a blessing. When we see ourselves as that daughter of the King and how he uplifts us and he loves us, I think that's a real start to getting our sense of true value. And then we're not seeking it so much from other people. It still may be a little bit uncomfortable to say no, but with practice, I think you'll recognize that with healthy boundaries and saying no, that people are still going to care about us. Even when we have to say no, because they might even come to respect us more for having that voice, right? So you never quite know how it's going to go. Then you can also reevaluate if those people choose not to love you or treat you poorly because you didn't say yes to their request. It might give you pause to step back and think about what you want to do with that information, right? So I think that's a really good question. And it really will help you to join the challenge that we've got coming up in a couple of weeks, where we answer and we do a deeper dive with action steps for you to look at. So for those 5 days starting June 20th, if you go down to where I have on the bottom of the screen here, leslievernick.com/challenge, you can sign up for just a small amount of money, $17, just to show that you've got your skin in this game and that you're willing to engage. In this, we will have a private Facebook group. So unlike here where your comments might be seen by someone that isn't officially a part of the group, you will have a safer, more confidential place to post your questions, to have answers to some of your challenges, that sort of thing. So I really invite you to join this so we can do this deeper dive into the very question that we have here about what do we do with that discomfort. I also think that discomfort's not a bad thing. Because I think it shows us, and I think it's God's way of sort of poking at us as to where we could possibly grow a little bit more. And I think they call them growing pains for a reason, right? It's if it didn't hurt, it probably wouldn't be worthwhile. Like, I don't know, I don't always believe in no pain, no gain, but sometimes I honor that little bit of discomfort because it shows me that I'm pushing myself and that I'm growing and reaching towards something else, knowing that maybe that something else on the other side is healthier. So in this case, knowing when it's appropriate to say yes, because it aligns with our values, because it fits within our schedule, because it's honoring our self-care, all of those things. If we, need to be able to say no sometimes, then we know the greater good is going to be on the other side and that God will honor us for that, for sure. I'm going to keep looking at some of the comments here. The more we say yes, we saw that, the more yeses will be expected of us. Emily saying the truest thing about you is what God says. Yes, Leslie said in the Conquer Journey. Absolutely. And so for those of you in the Conquer Journey, you know this very, very well. Leslie speaks to it all the time, as do our other coaches, about just how God values us so much. And I think it's really, really critical, right? So let's give all the glory to God. Thank you for him being able to support us and remind us that we are loved first and foremost, and that almost nothing or anyone else matters, right? But we do want to please him. And I know that we have to say our yeses at times when it's appropriate. So this isn't to say we have to say no to everything. It's just knowing when it's appropriate so that we can still honor God, our self-care, our timetables, those that we love, that sort of thing. Let's see. Oh, yes. So Dorothy's actually saying, actually, those who ask us to do things are usually women with Asperger's. They will not be there for you. So if some people stop talking to you, consider it a win. Honor you. That could very well be the case, right? So again, you kind of might learn who your friends are. Your true friends will really understand when you say no, or even if they're not a friend, but an acquaintance, they might demonstrate that they respect boundaries when they honor your no. Again, you don't have to go into a big explanation, but if you do give an explanation for your no or put conditions on your yes, then hopefully they'll hear you and respect that. And I think that's really good information for you to take into your heart so that when engaging with that particular person going forward or anybody else, you're picking up information as to whether or not they're respecting you and honoring you and loving you the way you're trying to love yourself. Because we all know some of the repercussions for saying yes too often, right? We've already addressed some of them today. We get too tired. They ask us yes too often, and then we can never say no, that kind of thing. So also put into the chat what you have found maybe from experience or what you would anticipate would happen if you said yes all the time, yes to everyone and everything, like our topic today. So talk to me in the chat about what the cons are to saying yes all the time. So Nancy's asking a question here. I am surrounded by people who complain all the time. I do not want to be around them anymore. So hard. Any thoughts? Well, yes, that's a boundary too. So sometimes those are what Leanne and I know Coach Leanne's here on with me. So we'll talk about those people that kind of live at a lower level of energy, like an Eeyore kind of victim, woe is me, always complaining type of scenario. And those people can be very draining to be around, especially if that's not your spirit. So when appropriate, you can simply remove yourself from that scenario. You can also do something called entrainment, which is by you being your positive, optimistic self and perhaps trying to coach them lovingly through, well, what's another way to look at this? Or, kind of in a non-confrontational way, but maybe counter their complaints and paint a different perspective. Sometimes that entrainment lifts them up to your positive energy level. Those are all little things that you can do when you're around sort of the people that might drain you that way. So those are some good thoughts around that. So we're seeing some of the reasons that saying yes too often can become a bit of a problem. Cheryl's saying she'd be living off Excedrin. Is that like big bad time headache? Guard your gate, don't let everyone in. Yes, possibly have that discernment, right, as to who's safe to be around. Cheryl's talking about she'd start to feel resentful and angry. And then doesn't that defeat the whole purpose? If we're constantly resentful and angry, we're going to end up being one of those low energy Eeyore type people that complain all the time. And I don't think that's our heart. So go back to many of you who would have heard either through Walking in Core Strength, Empowered to Change, or through Leslie's Conquer Journey. You will hear Leslie talk all the time about our big circle, right? So think about what our big circle is. And for those that you don't know, it's all of those things, sort of those godly woman-like traits you want to exude and live out every single day as best you can. So your values, your virtues. And I'm guessing, like to Cheryl's point, about having to have Excedrin all the time in order to maybe not feel so resentful and angry. I'm guessing resentment and anger are not part of her big circle choices, right? So wherever, just like Deanne was saying, guard. Like we want to guard against falling into those types of things. It doesn't mean that we can't get angry and resentful sometimes. It's just, I think we want to protect ourselves from that as much as possible and to keep it in check. So if saying yes too often, we know already is going to lead to that resentment, then why would we do that, right? Because now we're not honoring our godly woman-like selves, our big circle, by living out the traits that we do want to have. So maybe that's also a really good question to ask is, when appropriate, when we do say yes, and we've kind of checked all the boxes and we've kept things in mind, where does your big circle get fulfilled? Talk to me in the chat about where your values are aligned, what virtues are met, how you feel like you are acting like your godly, womanly self when you do say yes, when it is sort of a healthy, fun choice. I want to hear about that in the chat as well. So what else are we saying here? Taking ownership of my choices is key. Yes. How empowering is that, right? That's what Mary's talking about on the chat here. I can't speak enough about that. So a lot of when we ask ourselves the why, you heard me say earlier, it helps us get to the real root of what's going on. And whatever that might be for you, high level, go deep, whatever. As soon as we start recognizing what our why is, you heard me mention it gives us a chance to pause, reflect on what's going on, and make a choice. Well, I don't know about you, but having choices is so empowering to me, because if I jump from noticing something to boom, reaction, and I don't pause and I don't make any choices, first of all, anything hasty I find often comes from the enemy. And again, I don't want to give him a foothold at all, ever. Okay. So that's first. But also, if we go from notice to react right away, we're denying ourselves that choice. And we will often fall into the, oh, I have to kind of scenario, or I need to, or they won't love me, or all of that kind of negative stuff that we've talked about already today. It's a lot of self-judgment going on. And so again, if we can stop and pause long enough to make a healthy choice as to, you know what, it is okay to say yes in this case, or you know what, I need to say no, and this is how I'm going to respond. So powerful, so powerful for so many reasons. But the main reason being that you took charge, as many people are saying in the chat now, I get to have control over this. So if you have any questions, keep putting them into the chat, and Julie will keep posting them in our document here so I can read them if I'm not keeping up with the chat online, because it goes by so fast. You guys are so awesome today. Thank you. I do want to give a shout out, Julie, please don't be mad at me, but it is Julie's birthday tomorrow, and she is just one of our go-to ladies for keeping us on track here at Leslie Vernick and Company. So if you guys want to give a shout out in the comments there too, just to say happy birthday, Julie, that would be great. Dorothy saying here, as you heal, you will attract happier people. Yeah, that's kind of like that entrainment thing I'm talking about too. You kind of raise up other people to your level of energy, godliness, that kind of thing. The crappy people stay in your last chapter. That's great. We want to have that attitude of happiness. Don't let the negative bring you down. That's a choice we get to make every single day. And don't get me wrong, there are times where it's appropriate to go into that sort of darker place. It's where we go to garner sympathy and, kind of reevaluate some things before we can pick ourselves up and dust ourselves off. That's okay. It's just how long we stay there is not okay. So if saying yes all the time drags us down eventually to that low energy, resentful, angry part of our lives, I don't think we want to go there. So Jen's talking about recently, she's learning about her codependency and working on how to change that. Good for you, Jen. Really, really good for you. Because codependency, I think we all have traits about that. And it's kind of where we fall on the continuum there as to how codependency shows up in our lives. And, my definition of codependency, for people that might not be as clear with that term, it's really about when we enable people, we don't let other people hit their rock bottom. We want to step in as the hero and as the rescuer all the time. That our need to help, and to be valued in giving that help trumps the other person's ability to care for themselves. So that becomes a dangerous place because all of our value tends to get wrapped up in helping that other person. And when we're dealing with addictions, which is a lot of what I help coach partners in, and wives of sex addicts in particular, when there are elements of codependency there, or any type of addiction, it's where we kind of enable and we don't let them hit their rock bottom because we're so afraid of what that outcome is, when really the best love we could give is put boundaries on that person and their addiction to show that tough love, right? So codependency is hard, Jen. Good for you for starting to take a look at that. I'm really glad. And I really think that if you join the challenge, Jen, and everyone here, if you join the challenge at leslievernick.com/challenge for $17, 5 days, emails once a day, a chance to be in our private Facebook page, coaches talking to you every single day in Facebook Lives, along with Leslie, to be able to overcome so many of these things. And like Jen pointed out, starting to realize where codependency may be affecting her lives, you may be able to see where some of this stuff is, like, overcoming the overwhelm, overcoming the negative thoughts in your head. I get them all the time. As much as I've been on my healing journey for 11 years, I have to hold my thoughts captive. Thank you, Lord, for that scripture that is part of my daily life. We learn how to overcome those grudges and resentment that we've talked about when it does happen, because it will still happen. I think the reality here is while we're walking this earth, these things will still happen to us. It's what we choose to do with them is really the outcome we're after, right? We want to learn, like we're talking about today, maybe how to overcome saying yes all the time. So that's what this challenge will help you do. And it's only $17, which I think is such a gift. So please, please, please join us. We've already had, I think, hundreds of women sign up for this already. So I look forward to seeing you all in that Facebook group as we go forward. It's going to be amazing. So Deanne's talking about saying yes can be rewarding when I see the joy in the lives of those I love and say yes to. Yeah. So those are one of the times where it's okay to say yes. Like I said, if it aligns with your values, your schedule, your self-care, your big circle, I think that's really, really important. That's great. And Emily says, yes, we will be growing until we see Jesus. Amen. I wouldn't be where I am today if I wasn't after that quest of constantly growing. So even if you don't completely identify with a yes lady or yes man type of person, but any of those other topics sort of hit you about feeling overwhelmed or capturing those negative thoughts, those types of topics that we're going to cover, this challenge is for you. It's really, really fun. And I don't know if you've joined some of Leslie's challenges in the past, but they are so inspirational. They really, really get me going. And what I find when we do any of these challenges is that when we start off with something small, like this challenge, even if it's just one action step you take that whole week, man, does that ever build momentum and energy for you to be able to go, wow, okay, that makes sense. And I did that action item. Okay. That gives you more energy to be able to carry on to the next thing. So that's some of the big stuff we're looking at, the big, hairy, audacious goals. that Leslie talks about, this helps break them down into baby steps, right? So having those little tangible action items really builds us up to tackle the next thing. So I really encourage you to look at that. Even if saying yes all the time isn't your issue, so to speak, there might be something else there that you want to overcome. So I think that would be great. So keep the questions coming so that I can answer them during the time that we have here. So talk to me some more still about what it is that is the pluses of saying yes more often than not. That's okay. I want to focus on when it is okay to say yes, because it is appropriate. We don't want to say no all the time, because that would drag us down too, right? I think it's powerful. I think it was Deanne that mentioned, because it does make her happy, and it brings her joy to see happiness on other people's faces. Sometimes it really gives us a creative outlet when we've been asked to say yes to something. So if creativity is one of our big circle things, then saying yes to a project or something like that, or a request, will help channel that energy. So it's not just saying yes to that person and maybe making them happy, but in the background, it's fulfilling us in a really important way to charge us up so that we have the space to go and help other people do other things. So it actually is a boost to our self-care sometimes if we can be creative. Deanne's also saying that I've learned I can't be everything to everyone. Amen to that. I've learned to express this to my family, and we are learning boundaries. Good for you. And Deanne, if you can, maybe expand on that and give us an example of where you've had to put in a boundary and maybe what the response was to that. I think that would be really great to hear. Because we can't be everything to everyone. I mean, that's why God put us all on this planet as different individuals. And I love him for that. Thank goodness that we're all different. And that means we all have different gifts. So saying yes to one thing that is within our wheelhouse, or the gifts that God has given us, then go for it. If it's not within our gift, maybe sometimes too, by saying yes all the time, we're actually robbing someone else of that opportunity. Maybe they're a little too shy to speak up because someone like me has said yes. Oh, Jen always does that. Like at church, if Jen always does the welcome center and coffee and hosting, maybe if I say no once, it gives that other person who's been wanting to do it the chance to step up. So I may be a little weary, or maybe I've taken on too many things, and now's my chance to actually hand that over to someone. Maybe I can still be a part of the yes, but not take the lead role. So there's so many different facets to this. But when we talk about our gifts that God has given us, that maybe we have to look back and go, not everything is our gift to say yes to, and that maybe someone else can step into that role. And how precious is that? That we don't block someone else's blessing, right? That we want to give them the opportunity to do that. So Nicole's talking about, she says, if I say yes to give my kids my phone for peace for a while, I need to set stronger boundaries with them about screen time. Yeah, I think there's a give and take, and we have to manage expectations, right? And I think that comes through with clear communication. So that we do manage those expectations, because especially with children, because they can be more concrete depending on their developmental stage. They can just quickly look at it and forever and ever, amen. Well, mom gave us our phone, therefore we forever have screen time. Right. So depending on their ages and their ability to understand, I think that's really critical, Nicole. I love that you can pick and choose your battles and say yes to certain requests, and then, give information and some context as to when it has to be a no. And I think that's also an important lesson for our kids to learn, right? And other people as they learn boundaries. Kids have to learn boundaries at a very early age. They learn them, as Leslie says, by saying no right off the bat, right? As soon as they can talk, which I think is really important. So Deanne's talking about an example where she said no and allowed her siblings to help more with her mother. Yes, I know a lot of us, and as a nurse too, I've helped a lot of families that are in that sandwich generation, as they call it. So they're helping their elderly parents as well as still either raising kids or just getting them, into their empty nest sort of place. So they're kind of sandwiched in between. And that can play a big toll on families or on you as an individual. So being able to step back and say no to certain things kind of, if I dare say, forces other people to step up. And when it comes to siblings and sort of sharing the responsibility, I think that's also a very healthy thing to do. If it's always done with respect and good communication, right? So Deanne, good for you for being able to step back and maybe allowing your siblings to come in and care for mom. because I'm sure deep down somewhere that's what they'd want. And maybe your mom would want that too, right? To have her relationship stay strong with all of those in her family. So I think that's really cool. Mary's talking about self-awareness. Absolutely. I think that's really important. And she's saying, I know my own limits. That is, when my battery is low, I need to pull back and recharge. And I can do it without apology. Good for you. So that goes back to sometimes saying yes is easier than saying no, because we feel we have to give an explanation. Maybe in this case, Mary's talking about, I need to recharge. And so my no means no explanation needed, because that's just going to drain her battery even more. And then Mary's going to go off and do whatever she needs to do to recharge and be able to step back into a role later on down the way that she can say yes to. So I think that's really, really important. So keep your questions coming, or your scenarios about why it is that we say yes to everything and to everyone. And maybe we can start diving into a little bit as to what you've done to effectively say no and overcome some of those fears of being rejected or upsetting somebody or having that confrontation. I would love to hear some of your success stories or what it did for you. It gave you more time to do something that you really enjoy. Maybe it left you without that feeling of resentment for a while. I want to hear some of the positive success stories in the chat. That would be really helpful for us as well. And I think as we dive into this journey, as we do the challenge. So for those of you that might just be joining us now, we've got a challenge coming up starting June 20th. If you sign up below at leslievernick.com/challenge, you'll be able to register there. And what you will receive is a daily email. We will be doing Facebook Lives all that week, Monday to Friday, with our different coaches and Leslie. And you will be getting an action item to be able to move beyond. And we've got a series of topics that week, including this one about how to move beyond saying yes to everything and to everyone. So I think this would be, this is a really good precursor, if you will, to that deeper dive. So we love having you guys feed us into the chat about what more you would like to hear as we do a deeper dive into those topics that week. So I think it's really important to understand that self-awareness piece that I think Mary just mentioned, because without it, and if we just quickly jump to saying yes all the time, then we're going to get ourselves into trouble. That's where we go into that resentment phase, that sort of thing. So we've got some more questions coming in here, and I'll take a few more minutes then before we sort of wrap up for this week. I want to thank everyone for joining us so far. April's asking what time the lives will be. Julie, I don't know if you know that yet, if they're set. I think they're at different times, perhaps, April. I know a lot of times we do them at noon Eastern, but sometimes we do them around 7:30 Eastern as well. But that'll be mentioned, I believe, in your emails that you sign up for. And as far as I know, everything will be recorded. So we would love for you to be able to join us live and participate in the comments chat live. But you will also be able to see these replayed in our private Facebook group. So you won't lose the content if you can't join live. You'll be able to watch the video later on that day. So April's asking if we can access later. Absolutely, you can. So another question here is, I struggle with saying no or being the bad guy with my teenager, trying to know if I'm being too strict and where that balance is. That's a tough one for sure, especially when we're dealing with teenagers, because sometimes we can't say no or say yes enough to them and they're still mad at us for some reason, right? So again, I think it's a balance of, having that open communication with them, understanding where that line is for them, maybe really pushing on you to really push your boundaries, because we have to be careful with anyone, especially with teenagers, that if we give an inch, they take a mile. And so maybe it's easier to say yes to them in that moment, but we're going to regret it later because they expect yes, yes, yes all the time. So I encourage you to really look into your big circle, your values as a parent, what's healthy and safe for your teenager, and maybe have a conversation with them about that. Like, I'd like to be able to say yes, but until I can see that you're trustworthy with X, Y, and Z, maybe we can build towards that, like those types of conversations, so that they can see that you're actually willing to talk to them about it and that it's not just a hard no. But I think parenting really is quite challenging sometimes. So that would also be a good topic for us to talk about as we do a deeper dive that week of June 20th when we do the challenge. So thank you for that. Okay, so Julie so kindly put in our notes here when the Facebook Lives are. So you'll get more information about this. So you don't necessarily need to write this down. Or maybe Julie, you can put this in the chat too. But Monday, June 20th, it'll be at 4 p.m. Eastern. Tuesday, June 21st, the live will be at 12 Eastern. Wednesday, June 22nd, it'll be at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Thursday, June 23rd will be at noon Eastern, and Friday, June 24th will be at noon Eastern. So I can see how Leslie's trying to sort of tackle all the different time zones, at least that we have in North America. I know for all of you all around the world, we'll have to adjust accordingly. But I like it for people's different work schedules or kids' schedules that if you can't join live, you'll be able to access it a couple hours after we finish the live call. So thank you, Julie, for putting that into the chat. That's great. Okay, so we're almost, we're nearing the top of the hour. So if you have any other questions that you want to put in, it's sort of last call for any questions that you have for me about the challenge or about your scenario around saying yes all the time and maybe what that's done to you or how to overcome some of those feeling the need to say yeses. So I'll give that a second and make sure that we've met all of our questions. Thank you, Cherie. Let's see, I want to make sure. I think we've covered everything. And you know what? All of us coaches and Leslie do take a look at the comments too. So if you see this later or you think of something as soon as we end this live and you want to post it into the comments, we're always on there too, perusing and trying to answer as best we can. So feel free to post in the comments even after this live Facebook is over and done with. So we'll get to you as soon as we can, but more so you'll have all of our attention when you join up for the challenge. So I'll quickly again mention that if you sign up below, as you see down there, leslievernick.com/challenge. And that's where for $17, I can't believe it. I feel like I'm on one of those PBS sort of things, but for the low, low price of $17, you can't beat that. It's just to show that you honor yourself by showing some value to it. So $17 would be fantastic for a way to get engaged and overcome so many hurdles that we have in our life in a quick way with the support of Leslie's team, as well as that action step that you can put into place, if not one, maybe all 5. And I would love to be able to personally see you all in that private Facebook group so I can see where you're overcoming some of these things. I can't wait. I think it's going to be really exciting. So I think we can probably end it there for this Friday. I want to thank Leslie once again for allowing me this opportunity. I want to thank each of you for participating in the chat. And I'm sorry if I can't keep up with it because you guys chat so often that I can hardly keep up with it all. Thank you to our birthday girl, Julie, for keeping us here, keeping me on track and keeping all of us with our questions being answered. So I appreciate all of you and I wish you a very happy Friday and a happy weekend. Until next time, God bless. Bye-bye.